All right, we're live here on Facebook. I am Uriah Kiser. I'm the publisher of Potomac Local News. Joining me on this Potomac Local News live podcast is Rita Witte. She's with Always Flavored. She's always around and always doing something around Fredericksburg. And I asked her to come on to talk to me today about a recent article that we read. She actually, I read it, and then you texted me about this, and you're like, "What is this? Is this like what?" Apparently, you had read it too, and but the article is about doing business in downtown Fredericksburg and the rising cost of rents, and how some people are complaining about the rising cost of rents, and how some businesses are being forced out. So what I did was said, well, that's interesting. And this article appeared in the Fredericksburg Advance, and we'll talk more about that article. It's a good article. Um, I will. I What I did was I asked a bunch of people, in the Chamber of Commerce and business owners, what have you, to come on. And Rita was gracious enough to come on and want to share some of her thoughts. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Just excited to be here. It's definitely a worry for all of us. I just would love for us to figure out how to maneuver around some of these problems.
Yeah, yeah. So you're in the food business, right? So the cost, I mean, everyone knows, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, the cost of food from restaurants to grocery stores is skyrocketed in the past year and a half. And and so that leaves small business owners like you kind of you have to figure out how to do more with less, and still bring in customers and still make your product. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about Always Flavored and what it is and where you are.
So, we are a local hot sauce and seasoning manufacturer. And so, we make gourmet hot sauces. We buy about 60 to 70% of our peppers local, all natural. We don't add any additives or preservatives in any of our products. And then at our bistro, which is in downtown Fredericksburg on Caroline Street, we make sandwiches and paninis and breakfast items that use our products. So pretty much everything you'll find on our menu uses one, if not three, of our products. Most so everything that we serve has our products in it. Our chicken bacon cheddar has our barbecue sauce, the bacon has our barbecue rub, and so it's we're just trying to highlight our products on our food. So we have two sides of that food cost that rises. Not only do we have the cost of our actual products, our sauces and seasonings, but we also have the growing cost of the food that we sell. So, as we've seen that, we've just recently moved from a location. We were at 610 Caroline Street for the last year, and we've just moved across the street to 619. So we've definitely seen a increase in the utilities and the rent. So that's something that a lot of people here locally have started to complain, have had concerns about as well. So, speaking on to that, I've definitely felt some of those concerns.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So the article that the Fredericksburg Advance wrote, and they talked to some of the business owners there. Sugar and Spruce was named. One More Taco, which we reported they're closing. They've been around for a while. I think they're just going to go back to their food truck, and I think they have roots in Richmond as well. So they may, continue on to do business there. But, what this article reported was that the commercial rents have significantly increased over the past 3 years. Some of these restaurant spaces are told the reporter that the spaces that used to lease at $40 to $45 a square foot are now as high as $70 a square foot, and that there are more open storefronts in downtown now than there have been in quite some time. And they're also saying that their foot traffic is noticeably down for the first quarter of 2025. And they're saying, it's especially down during the weekdays. But business does pick up at night, but many shops there, kind of close at 5 o'clock. So, if you're not staying open past 5, you don't really get the advantage of that sort of bump in business. So, you know, the article just went over some ways that these business owners are trying to stay afloat, as you mentioned, earlier, and these challenges. So it's kind of lay the land for me and really the listeners and the what viewers here. If you've not been to Caroline Street lately, which is the heart of downtown Fredericksburg, where you are, I mean, is this what you're seeing? I mean, is this article correct? Are they reporting? Is this accurate?
I think it's definitely correct in certain aspects. I think as businesses, it depends on lease terms and it depends on when their lease expires. A lot of leases have escalation clauses that, maybe they have different negotiations that their lease isn't going to allow them to successfully continue on rent. Um, I think, overall, my opinion is, my first location was on Princess Anne Street. We were there for 18 months. We successfully moved from that location to Caroline Street last year. So 2024, I was on Caroline Street for one full year. And maybe I'm the different story. Our sales went, from the day I opened my door on Caroline Street, our sales were 3 times the amount of sales. The foot traffic, we did 3 times the sales volume every day consistently for a year in a 600 square foot building, since we've been open 1 month at our new location. And, we've definitely seen increased sales, decreased people, decreased traffic. I think there's a lot of things that are economically involved with it sometimes versus it being anyone's fault. Is there any one area or one person to blame? I think it's just a hard economy that we all have to work towards together, taking people out of the big box retail stores, taking people and reminding them that we are a community and that we're here, versus just saying it's any one thing. Is it rent? Is it food cost? Is it that it's more convenient for people to order their hot sauce from, online and get it delivered to their house through Amazon? The things that are different now that we were trained that we were doing. I like to Instacart. I don't want to go in the store and talk to people after I worked 40 hours this week.
Mm-hmm.
How have we changed those behaviors to get people to come back out and go to lunch? How are we as business owners changing the way we do it to get people to order lunch? It's really easy for me to say, okay, well, I have to charge $15 for this sandwich because that's what it cost me.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't
Yeah.
charge this, that's what I have to charge. Or I can say, how do I make this sandwich cheaper for everyone so I can charge it properly?
So you're dealing with, on top of increased food costs and rent costs, just cost across the board going up. You're also dealing with the fact that you have to sort of retrain what everyone was told during the pandemic, just what seems like, long years ago, but that wasn't that long ago. Everybody was told to stay home and go online and do everything you need to do online, right? And
Yeah.
so you have to sort of retrain the brain there, and you also have to and one always thinks that people say they want these experiences, right? They want to go downtown to an area, they want to walk around, they want to shop small, they want something unique and different that's not Walmart or Amazon. They want these things, and here you're offering that, and so I and then I wonder, the so does the blame fall on, is it the owners of these buildings that rent to the small business owners, or are they saying like, well, these are such niche things and this is what people say they want, so I'm going to raise the rents, or cost like ever for them going up too, like everyone else? I mean,
I
you
think
know.
it's, you know, I have very different experiences, I guess, with my, I'm not gonna, when I was at the silk mill, I had a very open relationship with the owner of the silk mill, and him and I would talk about what it looked like. Here I was really blessed with the opportunity to even move across the street. Like, we changed my lease and ended it so that I can get a bigger space because the owners had the same building. So for me, my story might not be the same, but I don't think, why would anybody want to hurt their buildings, in addition to, why would they want an empty property?
Hmm.
They're not making money on it. So, part of my agreement with our landlord was, I'm going to help you try to get somebody in my space, my little at 610, because we all want to flourish.
Yeah.
I don't think any business owner that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of them, and that none of us want anyone to not succeed. So if we say, oh, the landlord shouldn't raise rent, well, property taxes all just went up across the board.
Hmm.
My house in Stafford, our property tax increased so much that I had to figure out how to pay more for my mortgage. Is that why the leases are going up? Is it, why did property tax increase? Because we have to pay more to the schools. I think it's just understanding that as costs increase, we all have to just kind of look at how to do things differently. How
Yeah.
do we stretch out our dollars more? How do we find more local supplies and cut out some of that middleman traffic?
So what more can I mean, what more can the city do to bring more people downtown? What more can the organizations like Main Street do to be the voice of these small business owners, to you say, to articulate these issues where, if foot traffic is down, what needs to happen to do you and what are some of the ideas you might have to bring more people downtown? I know they have Main Street has a summer solstice festival going on the 18th of June. I keep plugging that in my fun weekend features newsletter. I think that's cool. So I mean, do we need to see more like events? Do we need to see more people just getting involved and saying, hey, let's put our heads together? What do you think needs to happen?
I think it's definitely more people involved, because I know some of the people that have had issues with, having to close weren't involved in some of the activities that Main Street's put on. The downtown during that summer solstice, I'm 90% sure that we will have a second restaurant week right around that July period. I know personally, like, I like restaurant week. I might have to give a discount, but I see new foot traffic, I see new customers. So I think it's us being involved as the owners, supporting economic development, supporting Fredericksburg Main Street, and also thinking outside the box ourselves. You know, First Friday's coming up. Like, how are we all going to support each other? It was, when our First Friday, when we moved across the street here, we weren't even barely open, but we put on a block party. I had rolling game truck out here. I had one of our local friends from the farmers market out here. We were playing music and we were just dancing in the street. I don't have
Yeah.
alcohol, but
Yeah.
we took advantage that there were extra people just walking around looking up. And if we keep shelling up and saying it's someone else's fault, then nothing's going to change. You know, Things are going to change when we say, come out, make this funner. A lot of people are complaining. I've seen people complaining about, that it's not family friendly at night anymore in the city, that it's not this. How do we change that? We put a light on the situation, and then we not be afraid. My kids were out there playing all night that night, and eventually I had to put them in the car.
Hmm.
What with the game truck, I literally had somebody who was helping watch your kids for a half hour, just because what else are they doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know
It's
if it's a
interesting.
city issue.
So last year, and so I'll say, I said this at the top of the podcast, that I invited a lot of people on to come on, and you were gracious enough to do so. Some people couldn't do it. Like the Fredericksburg Chamber responded. They were like, sorry, we can't make it. We got a conflict. But I also invited people from Manassas and Prince William County, are part of our coverage area as well. And I know this, and I received no response, but this time last year, they also do a First Friday in Manassas. They also allow the open containers, within a designated area in their downtown. And they were having all kinds of problems with getting people like at last call. To quit drinking, and you'd have fights break out. And so we spent a lot of time this past summer of 2024 reporting on that, and that sort of put a cloud over their First Friday event, which normally, typically in years past, is kind of the way you describe yours, bring people out, dancing in the streets. Now, thankfully, we haven't seen that in Manassas this year. And of course, I haven't seen or heard of similar things happening like that in Fredericksburg. So, so it sounds like that people are they still want to come out and support the businesses. Although, but if maybe they're not staying till 11 midnight, 1
Well,
a.m.
I
Most
know that,
families are home by that time.
yeah, I know that the actual First Friday part ends at like 9, which I think is fair. I think that's okay. Well, we're going to put the alcohol away. We're going to say if you want to drink, you should land here and stay there. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable cutoff to people wandering around, because the same thing as when I was a little kid. Nothing happens that after certain hours you're not having good things happen. Adults should be adults and where adults should be. But I think they'd have the celebrations in Hurt Camp Park, and they'd have the farmers market and the open events. I just think it really brings out the community that you can see it, you can feel it. And I get upset when people are saying, "Oh, there's no reason, there's no blame." Costs are going to go up. How do we impact the cost to go down? We have to look at what we do and either change what we're doing or figure out how to live within it. Like I made different decisions about some of the menu items that I made. I like to serve menu items with four ounces of turkey, but I was like, oh, I could put 2 ounces of turkey and 1 ounce of bacon and charge you $7 instead of $12. And that sandwich is going crazy right now. What's cool is that
Okay,
particular
which one is it?
bread.
You have to say it so we can all come try
Oh,
it.
it's called the ranch hand. And it's a little bit less meat and a little bit less, bacon than on the bigger sandwich, but it's half the price. And people are going crazy because it's a little cheaper. And if I sell if I sell more of those frequently, people are able to afford lunch. But that sandwich is even cooler because I'm buying that bread from a local baker. So he's making out. I'm selling twice as many as I ever would have, and now I'm buying more from him locally. I didn't ask him to lower his price because we didn't need to. Like, I built the sandwich cost around him not losing anything. So I'm using more of his product. I'm using more of my microgreens that I buy locally from somebody here in town. And how do we think of not hurting each other while keeping our costs at a place that we can afford? And
Yeah.
it's not easy. It's not something that we can do. I don't take a paycheck. I've been running this business for 3 years, and that's not smart either. But you
Yeah,
know,
and because I know you, it's fair to say that you started in your home,
yeah,
like most small businesses. You started in your home, and when you got that place on Princess Anne Street and later on Caroline Street, I mean, I remember talking to you. You were like you were ecstatic because there was just a milestone of just marking the growth in your business, and so and now you're in this new space. So congratulations on all the growth, and I hope you start taking a paycheck soon, sooner than later.
well, we
And
we we're fine with it, but it's just why I say that is because the growth that I'm able to express by me increasing our menu items to sell more of the products that are made here in this town is how I'm trying to even out the cost and giving back to our community. And the more we think of that, is the better we're going to be.
let's
We
think abstract real quick. Like, so we talked about the like open storefronts on Caroline Street and in downtown, and so we have an opportunity there. And obviously you and I don't. We're not gonna. We're not saying what goes there, and we don't probably. I don't plan to put up a storefront on Caroline Street. But what do you think would benefit Caroline Street? Like, what does it need? What does it not have? Like, what are some cool things that you think could open up on Caroline Street and do well, just like you have?
I think we have a really nice blend, and mixing it up, and people just thinking outside of some of the things, like even some of the small places that have closed. Did we need an extra coffee shop? Maybe, maybe not. I think it's people finding places. I like that, the OG really does celebrate the multi use spaces. They have something for everybody. And I think that's what a lot of the people that are going out are looking for. I think we need some more things for, younger kids or younger people. We need to start putting money and time into the 15 to 20-year olds because they don't have anywhere to go. They have to go all the way to Route 3 to Reclaim Arcade. How do we put something like that here? Because they can't sit in a bar. They can't, we don't have, if I had enough space, I would fill my whole place up with pinball machines that were free play,
Yeah.
things like that, because we don't have a place for them to go. And then the places that they can go get mad at them for sitting there for a half hour. I used to love that I could sit in a coffee shop and they would do poetry readings when I was a teenager. I'd get off of school and I'd walk over there and I'd get a slice of pizza and, a bagel shop. We had one. What happened? Stuff like that, like easier things, places that are known to have a lower price point that just allow people to be, somebody posted yesterday on Taste of Fredericksburg about the rec room, pool hall that serves cheap food. Why did it close? I don't know. I never even went there, but that's the demand is there for activities that require people to be in person that don't necessarily just center around alcohol.
Yeah.
I think as we're changing, I'm getting older and, these kids are not having places that they're safe to be who they are all the time.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think we really got to find places for them because otherwise they're sitting at home in front of their screens. They're never learning how to socialize with other people. And then we're getting mad because then they don't do the right thing,
Yeah.
and, we got to find a place for them.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that coin, we also need more entrepreneurs because and it was great. I sat last night. I was in a meeting at Stafford County Public Schools, and we were talking about their new centers that they have at their high schools, and they're opening a new high school next year in 26, and they're going to have a specialty center for studies there. But they have one currently, I think, that's opening this year in 25 in the fall for entrepreneurialism at Colonial Forge High School, and I think that's fantastic. I mean, I had them being an entrepreneur myself, and you're one. Just I can't tell you how many times I've been to a college campus and tried to talk to the students there about business and entrepreneurialism, and they just look at me and like, dude, I'm out all this money for college. I need a job. And
Yeah.
like
And,
that's all
if
I
we get them,
need.
if we get some of these kids an understanding the trades and we get some of these kids an understanding what it's like to be in business and feeling that community feel in these businesses now, maybe we won't lose the talent to and them getting in further in debt. Maybe they won't have to go to the corporate world because they'll see they have an impact with their voice today at restaurants and local. you know we can say it's somebody's fault, but you know that's why I love my partnership with Oberly School. That's why I love that I'm bigger now and I can start doing more activities. But somebody has bigger space than me. Open it up. Let's do some activities. The partnerships that each of us as business owners can create within ourselves, our buying power and our power is greater than half of these stores in town. How do we get them out of Walmart? Is we tell them to come to us. They will. We just have to remind them we're here.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to Walmart because they know that they can get the same stuff with us, but is it convenient? Did they find parking? Did they this? They have a lot of excuses, but most of them, if we give them a reason, they'll come.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's you're absolutely right, and I think that people just they're creatures of habit, right? And so if they're used to going to one place for something, that they'll continue to go there and not think twice about where they could get it, maybe someplace better or contribute to the community or just have a different type of experience. And I think that's all part of. I think what you said, it's like putting out that message, encouraging people to get involved. You know, quit griping and just roll up your sleeves and be the change, right? Do the work, come in and have some fun. I think that's at least that's my takeaway from what you said.
That's
Maybe.
it. I want to, you know, I can't complain anymore, because if I sit there and complain, that means I'm giving up onto the other side of it. You know, this this move happened while, like, I signed my lease to get this move in February. 3 weeks later, I completely ruptured my ACL and my meniscus. I had major surgery while moving a location, and if for me, I had every excuse to not do it. I had every excuse to sit down and cry, but that's not what we are. If we want to be these entrepreneurs, if we want to be these people that are going to succeed over everything, then we really have to just say, I'm going to do it no matter what. I'm going to succeed. If I have to team up with Billikens, if I have to team up with the hotel, I'm going to do it. And I want I want other business owners to get their feet into that. Like, we're not going to be okay with our friends closing down. Like, I'm friends with Maria, and it broke my heart that she had to close her business.
At One More
And
Taco, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it sucks. It'll suck if the neighbors right next door close, because I know that they have kids and I know they have families, and I would love to know that I could do something to help them. Do I call up my friend at Potomac Local and say, hey, we're having a big old block party, you come and tell your friends and I'll tell my friends? I post on social media and Billikens post on social media. Now we have an audience of 10 to 20,000 people versus who's posting for Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a fake Facebook post that isn't real.
Yeah, absolutely.
um
Real people posting real things right here locally, whereas, I hate to dog it, but maybe AI is doing some of that other stuff, and you're looking at the real faces of the community right here on this podcast right now. Here we are. Before I let you go and let you plug your restaurant and again tell everybody where you are, I want to put in a plug for tonight. If you're listening, if you're watching this live, listening live, Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Tonight is the first Meet the Merchant series. It's the kickoff tonight at Fraser Wood Elements. They too are on Caroline Street, and so
right up the
that's some.
block.
Yeah, it's right
If
up,
I
right
was
up.
in the store, I'd show you my spoons that David makes for us. The
Nice.
spoons that go out in every single gift box that we send out are made from David.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's tonight. I believe it runs from 6 to 8 p.m. And Fraser Wood Elements. They're located at 1023 Caroline Street, Fredericksburg Main Street. Putting that together and inviting everyone to come out and meet the merchant, meet your neighbors, and meet the people who just keep the place humming and vibrant and working hard to build and make community. So tonight, 6 o'clock, 6 to 8, meet the merchant. Before we go, again, tell us where to find you, whether it's online or in person, and give us all that.
Well, you can always find us at alwaysflavored.com. That's where we sell all of our sauce seasonings. You can find our menus for our bistro that is open 7 days a week. We open at 8 a.m. and Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday we close at 3:30. Thursdays we close at 6 p.m. and Fridays and Saturdays we close at 8. And on First Fridays we're going to be staying open until 9. Hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be serving beer and wine, which we will be buying our local friends to serve here. And we're gourmet hot sauce award winning. And like I said, we're at 619 Caroline, right next door to Billikens. And
There you go. There you go. Always flavored. Go check them out. Yeah, keep us in the loop. I appreciate the conversation about this. And of course, if you're a business owner, if you're in the community and you are seeing something that we're not seeing and we should be saying, talking about, let us know. I mean, I'm a business owner myself. I like to have these conversations. All the things that you've heard on this podcast, are very near and dear to me, and I know to you as well, because this is our home. So
I think that, I think you and I are doing exactly what, I've set out to do a long time ago, is just making a better community for our kids. Like, we got little ones and we want them to have the same opportunities.
yeah. All right. That's it for this Potomac Local podcast, this live on Facebook. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Don't forget to get our free email newsletter. It is free and packed with all the day's news. Go to potomaclocal.com and sign up for that free email newsletter, and you'll find out what's happening in Fredericksburg with our Fredericksburg Friday edition every Friday. Just sign up. It's free. See you later.